A version of you stopped existing this morning, not as metaphor, but as physics. Your heart seized in one universe. A car struck you in another. Somewhere, you drowned. Somewhere else, you burned. But you're still here, aren't you? If quantum mechanics is correct, if every branching possibility creates a real, physical universe, then the one thing you've always been promised is an illusion. Death, the only certainty you had, might be the one event you can never experience. You will always find yourself in the thread that survived. Every morning, you wake in the timeline where you didn't die. I need to show you the cost of that mathematical immortality and why your consciousness may be trapped in a narrowing corridor of unlikely survival. You have already died today. For all of recorded history, every religion, every philosophy, every desperate human choice has been carved from a single, immovable certainty that you will die, that your consciousness will end, that the universe you perceive will close like a door, and you will simply stop. This fear, this finality, has been the spine of meaning itself. But in 1957, a 27-year-old graduate student named Everett III sat alone in his Princeton office, surrounded by silence and equations, and wrote a doctoral thesis that whispered something unforgivable. He proposed that the quantum wave function, the mathematical ghost that describes all possible states of a particle, never collapses, that every outcome happens. Not metaphorically, not in theory, actually happens, in separate, splitting, equally real branches of the universe. His advisors despised it. They called it absurd, unscientific, a fantasy dressed in equations. Niels Bohr, the most powerful voice in quantum physics, dismissed Everett personally, crushed him. Everett left physics entirely, abandoned by the field he tried to reshape, and spent the rest of his life working in defense contracts, silent, bitter, and forgotten in the darkness of Cold War bureaucracy. He died in 1982, alone. His daughter would later take her own life, leaving a note asking to have her ashes scattered in the trash so she could end up in the same place as her father. For decades, his many worlds interpretation was exiled to the fringe, mocked, dismissed, erased from serious conversation. But whispers have a way of growing. Today, Oxford physicist David Deutsch calls it the only coherent explanation of quantum mechanics. Caltech's Sean Carroll publicly defends it as the simplest interpretation that requires no magic, no observer, no collapse. What was once heresy is now standing in the halls of mainstream physics, louder than it has ever been. And it is asking you a question you may not want answered. If every possible version of every quantum event splits into a real universe, then what does it mean that you are here, listening to this sentence in this one? You've been breathing for the last few seconds without thinking about it. Your lungs expanding, contracting, cells dividing quietly in the dark. But what you call breathing is something far stranger than rhythmic muscle movement. Every single breath you take requires trillions of quantum dice rolls inside your body, and you only remain conscious in the version of reality where none of them kill you. Let me show you the casino you're trapped in. In 1987, physicist Hans Moravec proposed a thought experiment called quantum suicide. The setup is simple, clinically simple. You sit in a chair, a gun is aimed at your head. The trigger is wired to a quantum event with exactly 50% probability. A single photon either passes through a half-silvered mirror or it doesn't. If it passes through, the gun fires. If it doesn't, you hear a click and nothing happens. You pull the trigger. Click. You're alive. You pull it again. Click. Again. Click. From your perspective, from the inside of your own skull, you will never die. You will sit in that chair, pulling that trigger forever, hearing click after click after click, convinced you are cosmically protected. But to anyone watching you from outside, You die almost immediately. Your head snaps back. Blood pools on the floor. The room falls silent. The experiment is over in seconds. Both realities exist. You just can't be conscious in the one where you're dead. Now here's what should terrify you. This isn't a thought experiment. This is your life. Right now. Every morning you wake up, every time you cross the street, every second your heart decides whether to beat again. You are sitting in that chair. You are pulling that trigger. You just can't hear the click. Every biological process that sustains you, every heartbeat, every neural signal, every cell division, depends on quantum mechanics. When your heart beats, sodium and potassium ions flow through channels in cardiac muscle cells. Those channels open and close based on quantum tunneling probabilities, and none of it is under your control. A stroke occurs when quantum-level disruptions cascade through neural pathways in your brain. Cancer starts with a single quantum mutation in a strand of DNA. A cosmic ray strikes one nucleotide. A proton tunnels where it shouldn't, and the replication machinery copies the error forward. One mistake, one misfire in the vast machinery of your cells. That is all it takes. Your body is not a machine, it's a casino, and the dice never stop rolling. Your brain alone undergoes approximately 10 to the 17th quantum interactions every second. To put that in scale, that is more discrete events per second than the number of grains of sand on every beach on Earth. 100 quadrillion probabilistic coin flips per second in the tissue behind your eyes. Each interaction branches. Each branch creates a timeline. In one branch, the ion channel opens correctly and your neuron fires. In another, it doesn't, and the thought you were about to think collapses into silence. A faint echo of a mind that almost existed, but didn't. Consciousness doesn't survive splits. It proliferates through them. Every quantum event that could kill you does kill you somewhere. And you, whatever that word even means anymore, continue only in the narrow, statistically improbable strand of reality where the dice happen to land in your favor. This creates a question you can't answer. Which one is you? If there are 10 to the 17th new versions of you being born and dying every second, which single thread of experience can claim to be the original? The person who started watching this video, that version has already died trillions of times over. You are not a continuous self moving forward through time. You are a label applied to whichever quantum branch happens to still be conscious. The you listening to this sentence is not the same you who started it. You are a funeral procession that calls itself alive. The thing about a cell is that you don't truly understand its shape until you've tested every wall. You've run your fingers along the cold stone, searching for the hairline crack, the weak mortar, the faint promise of escape. And when you find it, when you feel that one spot that seems softer than the rest, you press hard, you push, you convince yourself this is the way out. So let me give you 3 exits, 3 logical escape hatches from the suffocating implications of quantum immortality. 3 arguments that might let you sleep tonight, and then, methodically, coldly, I'll show you why each one is a trapdoor leading somewhere worse. First escape. This is just one interpretation among many. Unfalsifiable speculation. A philosophical curiosity, not real science. You can dismiss it the same way you dismiss solipsism or brain-in-a-vat thought experiments. Except, researchers at Oxford, Caltech, and MIT, not fringe mystics, prefer many worlds precisely because it is mathematically the simplest. It removes the need for the unexplained wave function collapse that has plagued Copenhagen since 1927. The Schrödinger equation, left alone, does exactly what quantum immortality predicts. You're not escaping into speculation. You're trying to escape from the math itself. The wall crumbles. You fall through into the next chamber. Second escape. Even if true, those other dead branches are not my problem. I am this version. I am the survivor. The other iterations, the ones that died in car crashes or aneurysms, they're not me anymore. I only experience this timeline, the one where I'm still breathing. Except, at every Planck instant, every 5.39 times 10 to the negative 44 seconds, you face an unfathomable number of quantum events that could terminate your biological processes. A sodium ion misfires in your brainstem. A crucial protein misfolds. A cosmic ray nucleates a fatal mutation. The vast majority of you, across the measure of branches, are already dead. The surviving version, the one listening right now, is an extreme statistical outlier. A lottery ticket that happened to win. You are walking on an ocean of your own corpses. The floor opens. You fall again. Third escape, the last one, the one you've been holding in reserve. Whatever the metaphysics, I am here and I am safe. My body works. Consciousness may be funneled toward persistence, but it funneled me toward a version that's doing okay. Except, quantum immortality makes no promise about the quality of your survival. Consciousness is pushed into branches with the lowest probability of cessation, not the lowest probability of suffering. The branch where the car crash kills you instantly, gone. But the branch where you survive with third-degree burns over 70% of your body, where you endure 6 months of screaming nerve damage, that branch remains. Locked-in syndrome, late-stage neurodegeneration. You only ever find yourself in the next moment of awareness, no matter how degraded the substrate. There is no fourth wall to test. The cell has no weak points. Every escape was a reinforced trapdoor. And now you're standing in the deepest chamber, where the air is thin and the walls press close. And you realize the prison was never designed to keep you in. It was designed to keep you alive. You were told there would be an answer. Here it is. You cannot die. Not in any version of reality where you remain capable of asking the question. The exit you've been promised your entire life, the peaceful nothingness, the final rest, the off switch, it was never written into the equation. Every moment you believe you're approaching death, the wave function splits. Your heart stops in one branch, your neurons go dark in another. But you, the thread of subjective continuity listening to these words right now, do not follow those branches. You cannot. This is not a gift. This is not transcendence. This is a glitch in the architecture of reality. You are not immortal because you are special. You are immortal because the alternative is unobservable. You are not the main character of this story. You are the residue, the leftover thread of awareness that by pure mathematical necessity keeps tunneling forward simply because you are still capable of experiencing it. You are the last flickering light in a house where all other bulbs have blown, and you will never know how dim you're about to become. Because here is the ancient horror hidden inside the math. The endpoint isn't death, it's degradation. It's the nursing home at age 97 where you can't remember your own name, but you're still aware enough to feel the confusion. It's the hospital bed at 103, body failing system by system, consciousness stubbornly persisting in whatever distant, endless branch keeps the neurons firing. It's the stroke that leaves you locked inside a body that won't respond, aware but unreachable, for decades. Your subjective experience will always thread through the narrowing probability spaces where you remain conscious, no matter how degraded that consciousness becomes, and you cannot opt out. A version of you stopped existing this morning. You didn't follow that version. You followed this one, the one that survived, the one still flickering, the one still asking a question that no branch of reality will ever answer. How dim are you willing to become?